Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, what life was like in the industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and his selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the town of Belchertown in Massachusetts. So, tell us a bit about Belchertown.
Alright, it's a fine community with a lot of features to it. It's the third largest community in Massachusetts by geographic size. The Quabbin Reservoir is partially located on its borders. And we're going to talk about the cemeteries of Belchertown today, since there's a lot of those. And we're also going to talk about what's around the town common, because that's a very busy place right on Route 202. And also, why does the Quabbin Reservoir affect Belchertown's history and present-day structure? So Belchertown was settled in the 1700s, and some of its cemeteries are that old, of course. Now, Belchertown has always been a place where a lot of agriculture has taken place, a lot of communities around Massachusetts, and of course, there's lots of churches around. So, since there's a lot of people that like to have different religions, there's, of course, Congregational Church, and there's a Catholic Church in town, so forth. And keep that in mind that I have on my website page just for Belchertown with all its many features that I consider important, and hopefully you'll consider important. And you can read about these churches, these cemeteries, schools, and parks, so forth. And we're going to talk about the town green, and that's around that is several churches, one Catholic, one Congregational, and one Baptist church. And there's also a Memorial Park around here. So there's a lot to Belchertown, and it has some lakes around too. All right, the Metacomic Lake and the Arcadia Lake, and it's at the end of a bicycle path, a very large one, and someday hopefully it can extend the bicycle path into Belchertown so people there can enjoy it right from its start. And it's at the end of the Mount Holyoke Range, and there's a lot of hills going through Belchertown, that's for sure.
And what are some of the cemeteries in the town like?
Alright, some of my favorite are the Lakeville Cemetery, which is actually quite an old place. It has a nice stone fence around it that gives it a quaint look. And it has a more modern section, but it's a very old section. And its good name, Val, means valley, and as you walk through this cemetery, you have the feeling of going up and down. Because the vales, or valleys, continue from a nearby lake right through this cemetery. And a lot of the old stones are pointing in the old proper direction. That's wonderful. Now, it's only the second oldest, so the South Cemetery is the oldest, and that's where a lot of the pioneers are buried. There's also a Mount Hope Cemetery, which is a non-denominational cemetery, and you'll find there one above ground tomb, and then you also find a lot of family plots, and they're all segmented by curbing, and so it's a really nice place to be, especially since it's very close to the Congregational Church and the town green itself.
And quickly, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org, and there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214 capital B at yahoo.com. and its tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, so what can you find at the Belchertown Common? Belchertown Common.
There you find more memorials to the military persons of Belchertown that died for the war, and you also find a roll call on some of the plaques of men that went off to the war. And also there's men that after the war settled into Belchertown, so they didn't enlist from Belchertown, but they were there when the plaques were put in. And of course it honors all the wars, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, which is on a very big statue, which has entablatures or engraved. And then it has World War I, World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam War there, and the modern wars, our present wars, are there also. So it's great to see all these men honored in one location, and it's very close. On the green is very close to the Congregational Church, which makes them even a more respectable area in the Baptist Church across the street. So this whole area is a very special place for most of Belchertown's residents.
And how has the Quabbin Reservoir affected Belchertown?
Quabbin Reservoir started in the 1930s and finished by the late 1930s. And Belchertown had, in the early 1800s, lost land to a new community called Enfield, which was the last community ever incorporated in in Hampshire County of Massachusetts. And then Belchertown regained much of that land in the 1930s when Enfield was disincorporated, because a lot of that land had to become part of the Quabbin Reservoir. So Belchertown's history is very much entwined with the Quabbin. And of course, the southwest corner of Quabbin is all now taken up by a border with Belchertown itself. So, and the lie of the land must be that it must have an uprise through the middle and a little bit to the south, and it does, in order to contain the Quabbin Reservoir in one location. And that is nice to see. And a lot of the put-ins are from the Belchertown side, and you can travel up the highway and see put-ins towards the right as you travel north. And right around Belchertown, there's a lot of stores that cater to be in the Quabbin area, just like there are in Ware and Hardwick and New Salem and so forth. So this is definitely a Quabbin town, and it has that feel to it. And so overall, Belchertown is a nice community, growing in size and population, and it's kept up by building up new schools for itself, including a new high school. And it's a very pleasant place. Hopefully a lot of things will continue to go in its direction, including an extension of the bike path, like I mentioned. And overall, I hope you get to visit a lot of features that I point out: the churches, the cemeteries, the parks, the big reservoir, of course, and also get involved with the history of it, going to the library, going to the Historical Society. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of other podcasts on this website, as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new videos and podcasts posted daily. Thank you for tuning in.